All right, welcome everybody. Shift tactic number 12, bulletproofing the transaction. Come on in, come on close. I'm going to introduce Clay Winder because I'm pretty sure no one knows who he is that's in this room. So Clay Winder owns the Red Sign team. Probably the most important thing you need to know about him, besides he can only see out of one eye, is that this is very applicable for him. He has closed 730 transactions as of right now. Since, when did he get going? 2008, maybe 2007. Yeah, that's a lie. I looked up his stats just right before this. So 730. He is an expert at making sure deals close, structuring them in the offer, and then getting them all the way there. Plus, he's basically broker for our team, so maybe double that number is how many transactions he's been involved. So should be a good class. Clay Winder. Woo!
Testing. Okay, guys. Oh my gosh, we have so many ballers in this room. We're going to have a good class. I want to keep this high level as most of the shift classes have been. And so feel free to go deep on stuff and let's have a good discussion amongst the group. By raise of hands, who thinks we're in a bad versus good market? Raise your hand. Are you in a bad market? Okay, class over. Clearly shift for you as a realtor. It's slow for you. Would you call it bad? It's what it does. Was 2009 bad? Because that was one of my greatest years of my entire career. I was doing short sales too, so it was great for me. What marketplace you're in. Commercial would be great. For sure. And you guys, this is shift class number 12. Hopefully you guys have attended most of them or even all of them. And if there's one message I hope the book shift and the classes shift have taught us as real estate professionals is that there really is no such thing as a good or bad market. They're simply different. And if you're like, this market sucks, it's bad, it means you have not shifted yet, right? I think that's exactly what Brad's saying, exactly what Melanie's saying. We were all back, we got started, well, you were started, both of you before me, but I got started in 2007. Completely naive as a lot of new agents are, and just had to deal with it. You know, it wasn't necessarily a bad market. It was just different than what a lot of the veterans were telling me was, you know, the bubble and all of that. And that's what shift's all about. And so hopefully you guys have gotten value out of this book in that it's different. It is harder. I would at least say that. It's certainly harder simply because there's the most agents we've ever had and not a lot of inventory, right? So this class is the last one. This is the last one, bulletproofing the transaction. I have my Shift Bible here. It even has tabs on it. You like this? This captured something that is ringing so true I think to all of us can relate to this. It says here, and I'm going to even draw it out and illustrate it. It says, when everybody believes the market is headed up, buyers are afraid of missing out. This is the FOMO trend line. When everybody believes the market's heading down, what's the sentiment of buyers? Buyers are afraid of sinking with the ship. It's just straight up fear, right? Fear of missing out, and then the fear of making bad decisions. Bad decisions, right? Have you? I assume many of you experience this. I can certainly say the last 90 days, my conversations with my buyers are triple in length. When our market just, again, 6 months ago, or call it last year, when the market's going up, buyers are just like, yeah, make it happen, get it done, just do it. Like, we'll take some risk. The market is fairly forgiving. If they make a little mistake here, there, who cares? I'm on the bandwagon of getting rich in real estate. So the conversations are shorter. We are head deep in this right now, right? This is us right now. So the buyer conversations and the seller conversation, all of our client conversations are very much tons of hand holding to help them through the fear of making a bad decision, right? Would you guys all agree? Nod your heads. So that's what that's where this whole chapter kind of begins with, is how do you deal with buyer's remorse? Now, to have fun, I wanted to bring airsoft guns for this, but I won't. It is bulletproofing the transaction. But I kind of want to segregate our room into the buyer half and the seller half. I want to make sure we're always addressing the conversations as if we're talking to a buyer and a conversation as if we're talking to a seller. If you feel like you're on the wrong side of the room, you can switch now. But you guys are the buyers, you guys are the sellers, and I want you to maintain that perspective. And as we're talking through some of these things, let's make sure we address both perspectives, because they certainly are different as we go through some of these things. Do I have a clicker? Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Ooh, I like it. Listing agents, buyer's agents, limited agents right here. You guys can beat yourselves up. So perspectives. Owners feel like they're selling too low. Buyers feel like they're paying too high. This conversation, obviously, we're not talking about the up market. We're talking about today. The book Shift was written for this market. But is this also a shift? For sure. You guys realize when I was born in like the 2007 crash, I didn't really know any better. And it didn't necessarily feel like a shift because I was just hard up to get any deal, right? Like I was doing short sales and HUD homes and foreclosures, but that's all I ever knew. I just assumed that was normal. And then 2012 came. 2000, and again, so that's like 5 years. 2012, February, I'll never forget, it was the first time I ever had multiple offers on a listing. I put up the listing, and like over a weekend, I had 2 offers. I literally came to, and I'm like, how many years is that? Like 5 years in the business. And I come running into Dean and say, Dean, I have 2 offers at the same time. What the heck do I do? What a cool shift, right? And then the rest is history, because I got to kind of ride that momentum. And honestly, I'm not that successful of a realtor. I just got to ride that wave. So congratulations, markets do this. So that was this point, right? But we're going to focus on this, and certainly someday, who knows when, and if anyone has a crystal ball, tell me, when are we going to hit bottom? What does bottom look like? And again, this number can be, a lot of people just assume I'm talking about home values, but I think for us as realtors, it's just simply transactional, right? How much money are you making? How many transactions are you doing? What is inventory? Inventory is obviously going up, but rate of sales, speed of sales, that's when we talk about kind of a down market. It's time, and it's just simply energy, right? There's a positive energy. That's why it's the fear of missing out. There's just conversations are happier, whereas this is tougher. People are in a little bit more of a negative energy. So when this starts out with remorse and avoiding that, I'm going to write down, I guess this is our eraser, Hunter. We're going to start with my favorite quote. And guys, I'm just going to talk really fast today and ask lots of questions, and you guys just stop me as we go. But this is one of my favorite quotes for all of life. All frustration comes from unmet expectations. Who in here has got a spouse or a significant other? Is this not so true in your relationship? Almost every fight you have is because you just didn't have the same expectations about whatever it is you're fighting about. Is this not like the most true statement when we're formulating transactions? If you have a mad client, or you're upset, or the other side's upset, it's usually because they have frustration from some sort of expectation, whether real or not, but it wasn't met, right? So we're going to have this as the foundation of this conversation of bulletproofing the transaction. So are you ready, sellers, buyers, and limited agents? We already lost Brad. He's out. He's out of here. Okay. We got a lot to go. In fact, I'm going to have somebody else be the scribe. Is that okay? Who is a good writer? Going once, going twice. Thank you for volunteering. I. Do you want to be our scribe?
Sure.
Okay, you're just going to write fast. So what we're going to do here is in this space, I'm just going to start picking on people. When you're structuring a purchase contract, buyers, when you're structuring, receiving and negotiating the received offer, sellers, what are things that can go wrong in a transaction? There's how many things are negotiated on a Rep C? Price is one. How many other fields and check boxes and things can you actually adjust, let alone the addenda? It's like 30 something. There's tons. So there's a lot of that. And I'm not asking all those, but what goes wrong on a deal? What are things that are like, oh, we need to set proper expectations around this, this, or this? Let's fire away. I'm going to start with some buyers. Give it to me. What?
Timeline.
Okay, so timeline. Let's write it down. Timeline. Okay. Inspection and repairs. Okay. Limited agencies. What do you got? Ooh. Are TV mounts included or excluded? Yeah, right. How many people have bought stupid TV mounts because their sellers took them? Okay, so inclusions, exclusions. She's a fast writer. Okay, sellers. What's on your mind? Oh, appraisal. Sellers care about appraisal, appraisal, appraisal. Earnest money. Yep. What else? Keep them coming. I want you guys all think, what's like the worst emotional, like what deal have you lost sleep over? Why did you lose sleep? What went wrong? Get it up here. Yeah, repairs, yeah. Oh my gosh, you gotta have possession. Possession. Who's had like the perfect new construction deal? You've worked with them for a year, you're the freaking hero, and then you kind of mess up possession and they're like, our moving truck's all filled up, and like, oh, but you can't move till tomorrow because you signed today, but it funds tomorrow. And then you get a 1-star review and they hit your guts. And they're like, but what about the whole year? All because of possession.
That's a rap me though, right?
Hey, there's a rumor on the street that you're representing a jazz player. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, I won't go any deeper because that's confidential, but that is a rumor I just heard this morning. Congratulations. What's going to go wrong with that deal? No, we're going to bulletproof it. That's why we're talking. Disclosure of your client. Yeah. Because you're probably going to have to use a non-disclosure of, yeah, you don't want your seller knowing who your client is probably. Well, totally. You know somebody is going to exploit, or they'll just open their big fat mouth and break some confidentiality with. What if they're a Lakers fan? Just kidding. Are you under contract?
Yeah, well, we're getting a counterfeit.
Sweet. Did you is the Rep C, does it disclose who it is? Oh, okay, not so bad. Every once in a while, you guys might not know this, but you do have the ability to purchase real estate with a non-disclosure. It's complicated though. The poor title company is like, what am I doing? Yeah. Yeah, I sold a property. I represented the buyer, but one of Blake Roney, New Skin, and I learned a lot about that because his name was on nothing. He had an authorized signer for him. I mean, the fact that I even knew it was him was like coincidental that I even found out. Like a lot of those high-profile people are pretty tactful on how they go about transactions. So let's protect it though. You're about to go under contract. Maybe we keep coming back to that example because it's fun. So glad LeBron finally chose the Jazz. It's awesome. Okay, what else? What are we missing here? What else? What goes wrong? What do you got? What's going wrong? Got possession, disclosures. Has anyone ever had, let's write this one down because I've had it happen twice now. Death. When a client dies in the middle of a transaction, that messes things up a bit. Yeah, and you have to jump into probate quick. Yeah, both mine were sellers. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, get it on there. In fact, to be more specific, divorce decree. Divorce decree. Yeah, and I think that goes back to like just remorse in general. And and I'm not really good at the slides, you guys. I'll probably ramble most this time, but like really, when the chapter really does, it starts off with that FOMO going up and fear of making a mistake. Remorse is such a big thing, right? Did I just make a big mistake? Oh, what was I thinking? And that is both sellers and buyers, right? Did I just blow it? Like nobody wants that feeling. And so I made the comment years ago when I first got into real estate. I was in a class or something, and we were talking about just our jobs in general. And it came up that sometimes I feel like as realtors, we're just a cheerleader, right? Just that constant communication of what a great buy, like what a great structure. Yeah, your rate might be higher than others, but compared to today, it's great rate. Just cheering people on that you really are. In the grand scheme of things, real estate is 99% of the time a great thing, and we've got to be their cheerleader. Yeah, and that might come down to just speaking. I don't want to say love language, but oh my gosh, managing emotions. Yeah, for sure. What else? Anything else? Yeah. Guys, how the heck did we miss financing? Yeah, financing might be important. We got appraisal on there. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Didn't want to buy the house, so they took all of their cash and stock. So we got an attorney, and he said, letter said, liquidate your stock, get your cash back. They enforced it, lost like 8%.
Oh man.
There, but he could, even though he got enough assets to qualify, and so he could sell like something still qualified.
Not to jump ahead, but there's literally a whole tab in this chapter called 7 ways to F up your finance. No, the 7 don'ts of mortgage lending. Literally, they've got them all listed. Don't change your employment. Don't make any major purchases like a car or furniture, vacations. Don't increase your credit card debt. Don't change bank accounts. Don't apply for a credit card or co-sign on a loan and make a credit inquiry in the middle of this. Don't spend money you have set aside for closing. We have a closing on Red Sign team right now that was supposed to fund today. She didn't have enough money. It's like, you kind of knew this was happening, right? And it's like, oh, yeah, I mean, it's just poor planning. We're scrambling. And don't delay in providing all the paperwork that your mortgage company wants. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we could literally take a whole class on just the financing, but we're going to cover as many of these as we can right now and talk through them. So let's start at the timeline of a transaction, and let's just visualize the purchase contract, and let's go through some of these. So let's start with earnest money. Earnest money. When somebody says earnest money has gone sideways, what can go sideways on earnest money? So it's not deposited. I'm not going to write all these down, but I feel like we have to write some of them down. Hopefully you guys are taking notes. It's not deposited. So how do we bulletproof that? How do you ensure that let me ask the buyers, how do you ensure that your earnest money gets deposited, buyers agents? You absolutely get the receipt. Has anyone ever just assumed that your client got it in because you asked for it? You sent them earnest, the office uses earnest. You sent them earnest, you assumed it came in, and you forgot to check for the receipt. Who's done that? Oh, come on. And I was going to say, we've all done it. And how many days do you have to get it in? 4. Are those calendar? Yeah, okay, there you go. Calendar days, 4 calendar days. Sellers, listing agents, I should say. Listing agents, how do you ensure that your buyers made the deposit of earnest money? You get a receipt. What happens if it's deposited in the wrong location? This happens a lot. There's addenda all the time that says the earnest money should be held at the title company. And then the buyer's agents over here, because earnest is so cool, even though it costs $15, they just are on autopilot. They send earnest. All of a sudden, the money ends up at KW, but you have an addendum that says it's in the title company. Buyers are, so this is interesting. Dan just said buyers are technically in default. Are they in default? Is your contract voided? voidable. That's a Dean phrase right there that I love using. It can be voidable. So you're at risk. Your buyers are at risk more than even the sellers. And again, we always want to, our goal is keeping it together. Okay, so what do? You fix it. Is there a timeline? As soon as you can possibly do it, right? What other issues could there be with earnest money? It bounces. So that's the same thing. It just didn't get in. Yep, totally. There's one that we do need to address in this class. What did you say, Dean? Oh, good point. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
So we had during the heyday, call it 6-8 months ago.
Oh yeah, let's start passing that mic because we have Zoomers on, huh?
So during the heyday, like 6-8 months ago, when everything was great, had a nice listing around a couple $1 million. People, 50,000 non-refundable upon acceptance, but the contract still said they didn't have to deliver it for X amount of days. I didn't say delivered upon acceptance. And so they backed out 3 days after the contract said we're not going to buy. But luckily it was a good agent with good buyers. They actually did put the money in escrow, forfeited 50 grand. It was a large earnest
But they
money.
honored it.
But they honored it. Yeah. Cause I think they had assets to be able to do it with. So if you're doing non-refundable upon acceptance, you need to make sure in your addendum that the earnest money is delivered upon acceptance. Cause at the beginning we weren't paying that much attention to it. It was just checked as 4 days or what have you. So that was one that could have easily went south with a client that I've sold a bunch of homes for and been like, that's how the contract reads. Could have easily ended up in litigation. It didn't, luckily, but that's if you're dealing with that sort of a quick deal.
Can we all just agree to never write a Rep C that says earnest money hard upon acceptance? Can we be done with that? Yeah, listing agents are like, heck no, we want that stuff. But buyers agents, come on. Yeah, bulletproofing for you guys, right? Sellers, yeah, Adam.
So I had a buyer, I wish they would have put hard earnest money down maybe a couple months ago because they were just so wishy-washy because so much inventory is distracting them. So even though they didn't need to, I wish they would have been a little more up. I wish they would have been more aggressive to put that money down.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point. Who has got earnest money before writing an offer deposited? So when I first got in the business, that was standard practice. Like back in 2007, 2008, you'd sign a buyer broker agreement, agree on like how much earnest money is normal. Okay, let's do $1,000 or $2,000. And then literally I'd say, okay, write a check. And we'd put it in the KW account. And then we would go write purchase contracts. And the reason is the purchase contract got updated several years ago. But before that, you had to specify, was it deposited or not at the time of writing the offer. And so to be a stronger offer, just a cleaner offer, I'd always want to have my check mark say, yes, it's already deposited. So we would ask for earnest money before we'd even gotten shopping. But who's doing that now? Nobody. But you should. We absolutely could and probably should. Anyway, just a side note. There's still one other thing on earnest money we have to talk about. Does anyone know what I'm fishing for? When earnest money comes from mom or dad, or the wrong source, that will jam you up. Why? Somebody said it has to be sourced. If they are getting a loan, the lender has to source that the earnest money actually came from the borrower, or they need it. Well, even that it's just added steps, right? Right. So again, I'll look at buyer's agents, making sure that your clients clearly understand that the earnest money needs to come from them. It can't be grandma and grandpa, unless they're co-signing maybe, but it has to be sourced to them. Yeah.
So I actually had a seller cancel on my buyer this last weekend. A seller cancel on my buyer this weekend, and their agent did not inform them that, I mean, they can't really cancel, but one of the remedies is to have the match earnest money as liquidated damages. And they didn't know that. And they didn't have as much as we had put down as earnest money. So it's something that sellers, we need to have the conversation with them that if in fact we do have this default, you could be matching this earnest money. Are you willing to do that in that event?
Yeah, let's maybe knock that one out too. Did we write it down? A seller's desire to cancel? I don't think it's even up here. Oh yeah, not wanting to sell, the last one. So let's just hurry and run through that. Can a seller cancel on a buyer? Yes, they can always ask. How does that process go down? It depends solely on new negotiations, right? What if the buyer says, absolutely not, we have a signed contract, we want to buy that house? Then what do? Seller can take it to court. Do they have a chance? Maybe. Maybe. But what if they simply just don't want to sell? They just change their mind. It's hard, right? It's hard. Totally. Totally. You're going to see, are they going to ask for anything? You can self-sabotage. And that's kind of a term that I think is fitting. Whereas the seller does want to get out of the deal, they just become completely non-negotiable for any requests from the buyer side. So if they need even an extra day for anything, nope. If they need extra repair, if they want repairs, nope. If the appraisal has issues, the sellers can just lock themselves up and the buyer side has to perform to the T on the Rep C. But if they perform contractually, the sellers need to oblige and sell the property. So yeah, you can sabotage it. Yeah.
This happened a year or two ago, but the seller wanted to cancel. I was representing the buyer and we had deposited the earnest money 1 day late, but now this was 2 weeks later and now the seller wanted to cancel. And they were claiming that they wanted to cancel and we had deposited it late. So they had the right to do that. And after discussions with Dean and everything, we had an addendum in between that time, which kind of showed that they were still wanting to move forward. So it was way too late for them to claim that we had deposited it late. And so they couldn't at that point.
Yeah, this is a fundamental contract law practice. Did everyone understand that? You guys get that? If the transaction continues to move forward with communication, addenda, and both parties are acting in good faith, the ability for somebody to say, well, time out, clear back at the beginning, the earnest money was actually deposited a day late, making the contract voidable. You can't do that. Any arbitrator, any judge, anybody with simple law would say, no, you had two parties working in good faith, that you've buried that hatchet. I don't know. Dean, do you have any? I mean, that is important to know, because I have had people ask like, well, man, we were so nice to them in the beginning. Now we're gonna like make them pay, and it's like, well, time out. Like we've crossed that bridge already. Yeah.
I just feel like the longer you wait as a seller, the less likely that's going to go in your favor if the buyer performs. Because if you come out up front, then you're not moving forward with good faith. And then the buyer gets to the end and they're like, well, what the heck? Like, you didn't do your job.
Totally. Because then they've spent money now on inspection, appraisal. Yeah.
One thing.
Having gone to law school, one thing to remember in all commerce, contract law was set up for the purpose in mind that both parties need to have a remedy to break their agreements. And when you state that we've changed our mind, the Rep C outlines what the three remedies could be. Specific performance has its own deals, their own thing. So doesn't matter. I'm just going to sue you. You got to give me the house. Well, these are all things that the courts take into consideration because there's a basic premise to contract law, and that is nobody is allowed to become unjustly enriched. You cannot receive more than the bargain for exchange, with the exceptions of foreseeable consequential damages, what is reasonable to a prudent person in a similar circumstance. So when we look at this from a transaction basis, it may make sense for the party to say, I'm walking from this, knowing that maybe I have to kick in double what their earnest money is, maybe what it is. So as the realtor, not practicing law, but as the realtor saying, these are the three potential remedies, then you have that ability to do that. That's what the seller says. Hey, if you back out, this is where it's at. And sometimes adding up all of that on a spreadsheet says, doesn't matter. I got something deal better here, blah, blah, blah. That's the premise of contract law, to be able to know where you stand if I decide to exit or to cancel or to this back and forth.
And that's why you have stories like Brad mentioned of somebody walking away from $50,000. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Any other comments on not wanting to sell? I think we're good on that. Let's get back to the purchase contract. I'm gonna loop death, divorce into an overarching conversation on title. Let's talk title and let's start with listing agents. Listing agents, how do you bulletproof your listings when it comes to the conversation of title? Let's get them out. How do you bulletproof it? What's number one? Go.
Don't wait until you owe them seller disclosures to get that title.
Yeah.
Okay, so under the seller disclosure paragraph, what is that? Paragraph 4? Oh, 7, you're right, 7. Does it say just the seller disclosures are needed? No, you guys realize there's like 10 things on there, especially if it's an HOA, right? And so what Dan's referring to is the PR, the preliminary title report. And so your recommendation to bulletproof your listings is what?
Get it like when you, as soon as you get the listing agreement signed, it might be a week or 2 out from actually listing. Get it, send it to the title company now.
Write this down, especially if you're a new agent. You have the PR in your hand before you go active.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, exactly. So you know who's on title. We actually, at the Real Advantage class that we were at just yesterday, we even talked about getting the PR report done for your listing appointment. I mean, one that shows like a level of, hey, I'm on top of it. This is what, the title looks like, but also you don't want to get to, the due diligence deadline and you don't know if like there's clean title, because then it, fogs up.
And that's way too late. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. What happens if you get a PR and you realize that mom and dad had co-signed for the house, but they also put themselves on title? You don't have a listing agreement signed just with the kids. You're active on the market just with the kids. Heck, what you just said, you may have accepted an offer, got some buyers all excited, spending money all the way to due diligence, only to find out that mom and dad actually have they're at odds with their kids and they don't agree to this sale because they're owed a certain amount of money or whatever it might be. Who's at fault here? The listing agent, straight up. And you are in trouble. So having that PR before you go active, the reason I want everyone to write that down and have that commitment is so that you know that your listing agreement matches who's actually on title. That you don't have a deceased person on title, which is fine. You have to deal with that and make sure you have a death certificate and obviously hope that it's already gone through probate and you have the right people signing for it. But just making sure that your listing agreement and PR are the same. I've had plenty that haven't been. Yes.
We have had constant issues with this alone, where they, with the states, they think they're the executor, find out they just had a will, nothing's recorded. So it's just one person. When we find out it's all 5 siblings. We've had where someone's on their deathbed, we're getting ready, and it was in a trust and found out the attorney made a mistake when recording with the county. So it was booted out. The sellers never know this, because it was his parents' home. He's on his deathbed. We're closing, and we've got to get a probate attorney. So,
and how long does probate take?
We did it fast. We just got an
What's
attorney.
Considered fast, though? Still not an hour.
No.
How many days?
It's at least a week.
It's a week.
But I'm telling you, even with all these counties, because we work in all the counties in Utah, those are the worst, because what you even see on your tax data is just a lot of times wrong.
Right. And that's why the PR, the title company's job, is to do the search to make sure there's not deeds or things sitting in filing cabinets down in Juab County.
We had a property in Duchesne. We were the 3rd agent, and we did research on the title. It wasn't even marketable to sell. We had to get an attorney, go to court. It took a year. And so that's what I'm saying. This will kill a deal faster than anything. And with people, estates, sales and trusts and wills, you got to make sure that title's correct.
For sure. So let's pick on the buyer's agents. Buyer's agents, how do you bulletproof your buyer transaction when it comes to the conversation around title?
All right, write the offer. Full title, make sure.
And just make sure who's on title is who the contract is
You
with.
say pull title, you're actually one of the few agents that just clicks on that tax ID to make sure that it matches.
Yeah.
Don't you love the agents that down at owner, they put on file, private. Yeah, private, buddy. I'm one click away from seeing who it is. Don't you love that?
But I want to make sure it's spelled right and I'm putting it correctly. So that's just a
Yes,
quick
thank
way
you.
to check.
Buyer's agents, well, and listing agents. I'll pick on the listing agents. Listing agents, do put your sellers' names on the MLS because it auto-populates the Rep C for the buyer's agents. You don't want to get off on the wrong foot by having the wrong sellers right out the gates. You receive an offer, you're like, well, that's not even my sellers. Well, because you didn't put it on the MLS, we're trying to click on, like, yes, that's a good little tip. What else? How do you protect your buyers? One thing you're going to learn through this entire conversation is buyer's agents, guess what? You've got to do the listing agent's job. And listing agents, guess what? You've got to do the buyer's agent's job, the escrow officer's job, the appraiser's job, because you're pulling comps for them, the mortgage lender's job. You're doing everybody's job. And all agents, I think we've got to understand that we get paid the most in this industry usually. Everybody buys us lunch because the buck stops with you. You control the relationship normally, but you also control the deal. And so when things go wrong, it's your fault. If the lender messes up, it's your fault. If title makes a mistake, it's your fault.
So I have agreement with my title. I want to know when they pull that PR. I don't just want to know the vesting is correct, or I want to know if there's any funky liens or anything on there. I don't want to know that they have federal tax liens on the property or anything else that could create a problem. I actually had, and this is when I was a lender, but we had one that he had a whole bunch of liens that didn't show up that were on there, but nobody took serious. And when they found out that they were legit and real, he owed way more than the purchase price of the buyer that was buying it. And it was unsellable.
Perfect.
So
yep.
It's not, so I make sure my title company, you tell me anything off. I want to know. I am not an escrow officer. So you're the one looking at that. And I need to know immediately if there's anything on there that we have to investigate. We have to look. Don't just send me the report and think I'm looking at it, because I'm not.
Totally.
Literally.
Totally.
So I just need to know, and they know that that's the way I work.
That's the second half of the title conversation. As agents, we make sure our names are right, and we make sure that liens, judgments, payoffs in general, that we know what those are. There was a culture back in the old market crash days where Dean had a very clear rule for all of us, and that is you do not go active on the market without also having your payoffs. Why? Brad just walked out of here because how many of our listings were short sells? Who doesn't know what a short sell is? Own it. Raise your hand. You heard this term? We got a few people in here that don't know what a short sell is, Dan especially. Short sell has nothing to do with time. It's when a seller is selling the house for less than what they owe in either mortgages or liens or all that. Huh? Because you're on my good side. Like right now, Melanie Aird could be in the Bahamas. I can't see anybody on that side of the room. Yes, I am blind in this eye. But yes, I saw your hand. Yeah.
One more thing to go with title that I was thinking about is making sure that your seller knows that they're the ones that are purchasing the title insurance, the title policy.
Ooh, good point.
Which we've run into that before. Just like one time it was a bad situation, but if they don't
only once?
Yeah, luckily
I've run into that a lot of times.
But
yeah.
Making sure that they realize that and how much it is, because it might be a little more than they're thinking.
Yeah, we kind of missed like the biggest thing, which is the unmet expectation of the numbers on the transaction. I remind everybody, you should review the numbers with your client, seller or buyer for that matter, but really the seller is 4 different times in the transaction. The very first time, of course, is when you're putting the deal when you're at the listing appointment. You should be doing a net sheet at the appointment, right? You should be doing a net sheet when you receive the offer. Before they sign and accept an offer, you do an updated net sheet that's perfectly reflecting the offer. And then as you get close to closing, for sellers, I do actually pretty early where I get an official statement from the title company. So it's already broken out how they do it. And then the 4th time is at the closing table where they actually sign with blue ink. There's nothing that says you're a crappy agent more than you getting to a closing table and your seller or your buyer says, "What the heck?" Like if you have that moment on numbers, shame on you. That is like Realtor 101. If you have a client get to a closing table and they are surprised by the numbers, you messed up. Yeah.
So another thing, very, very important, you ask them if there's a trust. If there is a trust, you get the full packet and you can tell them, let them sort it. Not want to find out 3/4 of the way through that it has not been completed, that certain signings are not on there.
Yep, totally. And as you're going through that PR, yeah, for sure. And a good title company, when they're pulling the PR before you even go live on the market, will say, hey, I'm showing that a trust owns this. We need those documents. Well, yeah, we all need those documents. We want to make sure that the signers for the trust are signing on the listing agreement.
So I was going to say a new one that we're all going to have to deal with is forbearance. People are going to have forbearance on their stuff that they haven't thought about. So I asked that at my listing appointment if they took forbearance.
Wow, write that down, everybody. I haven't asked that one time yet, but you're right. A lot of people took forbearance. Ugh. I'll tell you what, though, getting the payoff will show that quick. I did have one of those. When I got the payoff, I was like, whoa, guys, this is way more than you told me at the listing appointment. And I couldn't see why. And I'm like, oh, yeah, because we took forbearance. Yeah, that they did not get free money, just so everyone knows. Forbearance just put it on the back. And there are other fees. I swear there were other fees associated with it. It was not a free gift. Anything else on title? Guys, I promise I'm not yelling at you. You're a bad agent. Got a little hot there for a second. Yes.
I had one where it was on the seller's disclosure. I had one that was on the seller's disclosure stating that the school district had an easement on my client's backyard, but it wasn't clear on what that exactly was. We didn't really look into it. My client didn't seem concerned. That was my bad. I should have dug into it. They lost half their backyard to the school district.
Whoa.
And this is already on a vineyard home that had like 0.10 acres. So check that stuff out. That was bad.
Whoa. That's a whole nother class too on encroachments, easements.
Yeah. They did buy another house with me though. We're on good terms. So I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, but I'll tell you that that would have been messy. Let's really quick hit divorce. You get that call. It's a divorce situation. What do you got? What boxes do you got to check? First question is going to be, do you have a decree? Are you actually divorced or are you guys just fighting right now? Like what stage are we at here? So if there's a divorce decree, a lot easier transaction, right? Because the divorce decree should, especially if they used an attorney and not just like the online version like I used, get an attorney to like write out and spell out how the house is handled. Who picks the realtor, who can sign, how is the equity split? It should be spelled out in the divorce decree. What if you don't have a divorce decree? No, they're not even at a judge. They're just ready to be done with each other. They don't even know what they're doing, but they are splitting, and that's what's causing the sale. What do you need? It's pretty simple. You need cooperation from both still. You need, and whether. Yeah, I was gonna say, and a lot of them will say, "Well, I'm talking to an attorney. My attorney, you got to talk to your attorney," which I've done that too. But at the end of the day, I don't care what an attorney says. All I care is what does title say, and title says you're both on title. I just need to work with both of you. And so you have to make sure as an agent, are you doing these together? Are you doing a group chat on your phone? Are you doing both? And there's often times where you have to just ask yourselves, is that even a transaction that you feel equipped to handle? Because you very much will become not just but the mediator in that relationship. Which one of the best classes I ever took that prepared me to be a realtor was UVU has a mediation class. You read Crucial Conversations is like the textbook. If you guys haven't read that book, all of us should read Crucial Conversations as a book. They're doing classes on that, but it teaches you how to mediate, and how just to be that liaison and how to build that trust. So immediately telling them, hey, I'm not just in the husband's corner here. I literally work for both of you equally, and I will unemotionally go through this process. Yeah.
So we represented a seller that the two of them told us both were in the process of getting a divorce. Great. It was signed by the person who said, I'm on title. Got it. As this progressed, the wife said, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to sell it for that price, blah, blah, blah. I went back and said, unfortunately, we don't represent you. We represent who's on title. That happens to be still your husband, going to be ex-husband. And he says, dump it. Let's get it sold. So real quickly, She was doing everything she could to sabotage.
Sure.
But we had.
Won't say yes to the showings.
Won't do anything.
Yeah.
But it was all about try to work it out. But guess what? Who has the legal authority to sell this? And it was him that says, yep, it's going to be me.
And who gave him that legal authority?
Through the process of getting the divorce.
A divorce decree.
Yeah.
Some sort of agreement. But if you don't have that agreement, guess what? You can't force that wife to sell that house as much as that husband wants it. You work and have a fiduciary to both of them. That's a tough spot to be in, but tackle them. In a market that's going down right now, there's always divorces, there's always marriages, there's always death, there's always real estate that will have to be transacted. It's just usually in these distress situations. So I would invite all of you, like, learn it, become a good mediator. You can change people's lives by helping them through that transition, especially if it's a fairly amicable breakup. The house is the one thing that could really tear them apart. If you can navigate that well and help them work together and separate with the house not being a big emotional, you are an amazing person. You were the hero in that deal. And that's a good feeling to have that closing take place. And you can say, wow, I helped them move on in life without them at each other's throat over the house. Because the house usually is the biggest money and they're going to fight over that. Any other thoughts on that? Go.
Clarifying question. So
Please.
even if the husband, for example, is the only one on title, but they haven't gone through the divorce yet, then it's both of them that have to be on board. Okay.
Yeah, good question. I've had that situation before where just the husband's on title but they were married when they bought it. They're married in their summer. And my advice is always, before you bulldoze your soon to be ex, she's still your spouse, you should get some legal advice, because marriages are very legally strong, and you could get an attorney that could say, and an attorney quickly could say, hey, even though he's the only one on title, we're entitled to half that, and they're going to record a notice of interest on the property, is what happened to me. And I said, look, you've got to just plan on that. Like, you would do the same thing if your wife was bulldozing you. So they recorded a notice of interest, which wasn't even necessary, because my guy said, okay, I'll work it out. And sure enough, at closing, That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's letter of the law, but gosh, spirit of the law. I mean, that's one of those, like, we still got to care for people. Yeah. Anything else on divorce? Let's just hit death then real quick. Death. If it's an estate sale, the owner on title, the owner on PR is a human that is deceased. What do you need? Yeah, you know. Yeah, you need probate.
You need to have a probate attorney on hand, because a lot of times they don't. The siblings don't take the paperwork and do what necessarily needs to be done with the county. Mm-hmm. And so you always should have a good probate attorney that you can call, and or just an attorney or whatever that can take their documents, get them recorded with the county, do the things they need to do so they can update title, so that whoever needs to sign can sign if you need to go to probate. But you need to have a couple on hand.
For sure. Does anyone have any questions about that? You need some legal authority that says who is signing for the estate. That's it. That's what probate is, right? So both of the deaths that I've had were mid-transaction. Thank goodness they were elderly, and both of them did have a trust. So when they passed, they did have to restructure some of the trust language, but it didn't mess us up too bad. Yeah, sad situations, but it happens. Okay, we're going to keep flying. We got to get into the meaty one because we're running out of time. We got to get to the meeting. What's the number one cause what are the top two causes for failed transactions? Financing and inspection. Financing, let's talk inspection. We're running out of time. Let's go inspection real quick. Inspection, let's actually get ahead of it before the inspection even takes place. Listing agents, how do you bulletproof your transaction when it comes to getting ahead of inspections? Go quick.
So I want to know the thoughts on pre-inspections, because I've never done them, but the book talks about it. That says you should get them done. what's everyone's thoughts?
Yeah, so that goes to disclosure. So listing agents, you have the ability, if you really truly want to bulletproof your transaction, be an open book, don't hide stuff. Would you agree? Which could be just the seller just discloses the heck out of everything using the seller disclosures, or to go the extra mile, what Becca just suggested is something that all inspectors are totally willing to do. And they'll even discount their inspections sometimes because they really like to get ahead of it. And that's to do a pre-listing inspection. Imagine if we were in a world where buyer's agents could get on the MLS, not only see the house, but in the attached documents, click on it and already have an inspection done by pillar to post or whoever, is reputable. And they can literally just see everything. How bulletproof would that transaction be? It would be negotiated up front, any compensation needed for some of those things on the inspection. Wise Dean.
One other thing you can do in addition to your pre-listing inspection, get all those things fixed, the major deals fixed, have attached receipts from the contractors. It's amazing how, this is just from a negotiation class, they said if you do that and then your buyers come in, likely they won't even perform an inspection because you already did it all.
Totally. Guys, do we need to reread this? All frustration comes from unmet expectations. A buyer walks into a house and decides to spend $500,000 in about how many minutes? How long is a showing? 30 minutes? 30 minutes. They decide, yeah, I'm going to spend $500,000 in 30 minutes. But their expectations are solely on the information that the listing agent provided. So they've got photos, they've got maybe the disclosures, and they're standing in the home and a 30-minute just visual, they're making that decision. That's why I say the fastest way to bulletproof our transactions in this regard is for the sellers to be upfront. And if the house is older, gosh, do a pre-listing inspection. I've done a handful. I don't do a lot, but I've done a handful. And I've done it more for what Dean said. Let's just see if there's anything that's going to pop up. Investors, guess what? I always recommend do the meth test before you go live. Before you even go on the MLS, just know, because there's nothing that's going to kill your deal faster than positive meth, right? Do we have meth in Utah? Yep. All over the place. What? I can't count how many positive meth tests I've had. Yeah, I'm from West Valley. So that's getting ahead of it.
Expectations.
Yeah.
It's a very big one with the buyer and with the seller.
Yep.
I've had 5 pages of things come back from a buyer's agent.
Oh, don't you love the buyer's agent that just forwards the whole inspection report?
The
and says,
entire
get
thing.
it all done.
Yeah. And they're looking over, and about the 4th page, I was done with it. There was no expectation set on what you were looking for. I said, so how much is this all going to be? And they said, well, we'll take 5,000. I said, well, you're getting 5,000 in closing costs. I guess we're good.
Yeah.
Done.
Good to at least take it there. Now when you say know the numbers, again, I would invite all of you, write this down. When you're doing your net sheets with your sellers, have a concession line. Yeah. Just own it. And I'll tell you right now, my concession is what percent would you do right now? 3 full percent. Why? 1% for repairs and just whatever. 2% for the potential for somebody asking for a rate buy down. They can ask for up to 2%. And in fact, a lot of my listings that I've had, I have been asked, it's fat stuff. So guess what else I've switched listing agents? I now no longer pay commission on the gross. I've had to switch to net on my last 2 listings. And from this day moving forward, all of my listings will be paid on the net because there's just so much concessions. Do you guys understand that? Because I don't want my sellers to pay commission on the huge, my one deal I did was 2% on $1 million home. It's like $22,000 because it was 1.1. It's like, you want to pay concession or pay commissions on that 22 grand? That's not fair. It's not a ton, but it's still $500 or whatever that adds up to. Does that make sense? Yeah. The last thing I'll say on inspection, and we'll get close to wrapping up, have a level head. This is probably the most combative part between buyer and listing agent through inspections. And when you're in Ignite, when you read the Red Book, when you read Shift, all the time, it reminds us as agents, you you are the one that should not be emotional. So when your buyer gets hot and, oh my gosh, they hid the meth, they hid this repair, they hid this, how dare they, we're so mad, we're going to just blow up this deal and cancel it. For you to be the professional to say, well, hang on, this could be an opportunity for you to get a better deal. This could be an opportunity for you to get maybe a little credit to do a remodel and get some things. For you to be the level head that provides solutions instead of, you're right, Amy, how dare they do this? I'm going to call them right now and shoo them out. You listing agent, that's not our job. Keep that level head and be the problem solver is like the message when it comes to inspections. Do y'all agree? That's hard to do sometimes too, especially when you really love your client and you kind of get emotional with them. It's like, well, time out. I've got to be the unemotional one for sure. Okay, guys, we've got to wrap up soon, but I don't want to end quite yet. What pressing issues on here are you dealing with right now that we need to address? Yeah.
Inclusions and exclusions.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up.
There needs to be solid communication on those. We recently had a deal on our team where we were the listing and we had excluded certain things in the listing. And then
they slipped them in on the offer.
Then they slipped them in on the offer. Our agent missed it. And now there's a huge fight about that. If you're the buyer's agent, be transparent and vocal to the listing side of what you want included and excluded. You can say, hey, I saw in the MLS that you're excluding your fridge. We want it. That way it's not.
Yeah, I'll tell you, nothing bothers me more as a listing agent when a buyer's agent sends me an offer and quietly slips some of that stuff in.
It's the worst.
When I have loudly said it was excluded, because then they're kind of hoping that I might be buying a fridge. How many anyone else buy a fridge in this room? I've bought like 4 fridges, but I'll tell you, I've learned it took me 4 times.
Washer, dryer.
Listen, when I present an offer to my clients, first of all, it's always done in writing, always, even if it's my mom and I'm like, hey mom, we got a great offer. I trust you. Just make it happen. No, I'm going to spell it out in an email. I'm going to send it to her. And my email, because I have a template for it, one of my paragraphs says, I don't care if you read the whole Rep C attached, but I absolutely want you to read at least one paragraph, which is paragraph 1, the whole thing, 1.1, 1.2. I want them reading that because there's some subtle language in the default that matters, such as curtain rods, curtains themselves, drapes, blinds, anything with a screw, and it spells them out. The TV mounts, so many sellers take their TV mounts, but by default, they are inclusions. It's got a screw. It's in there.
The wall mounted part is included. The part that attaches to the TV.
Yeah, but are you really going to take half your mount? Like, yeah, but guess what? I've dealt with the wall mount thing. Solar. Is solar included or excluded? It's included, and you better use that solar addendum to spell it out. Yes, Amy.
I did a deal this summer where I was the listing agent, and they wanted to keep the lilies, the flowers, some of the peonies and things like that. And so when we wrote the listing up, we put that in there. And when the offer came in, it was a non-represented buyer. And so they didn't have that in there. And then I had them correct it. And
perfect.
By the end of the deal, we took the flowers were gone and everything, but still we wanted it spelled out in the beginning.
Melanie, did people plant rose bushes for their kids? Yeah. Tons. Do you know how many rose bushes I've excluded? A lot. Not so much anymore, but there was a generation there for a minute that.
Well, and I tell people, move it now. Move it now. I don't want it in the future.
Yeah.
Move it out.
Yeah, that's
But
interesting.
Also, when someone says, oh, I know you've got the fridge excluded, but my client really wants it, I'll always say, great, put it in an addendum so I can talk to them. So they're not slipping it in on the other side so that I can actually have that conversation with them. And it doesn't just get slipped in as an included thing that they wanted without asking. So I always tell them, great, if you want that, then go ahead and put it in an addendum. And then I don't miss it either.
Yeah.
It's not the buyer's responsibility to explain what's on the purchase contract to the seller.
You're right. Read it.
Yeah.
Read it. Yeah. And that's why I bought fridge, because Dan's got a point here. When somebody puts on the refrigerator, when I know I put excluded on the MLS and I don't present that well to my seller, we move forward. All of a sudden my seller gets toward the end and starts packing up their fridge and the buyer says, whoa, the fridge is included. Who bought the fridge? I did. Why? Because of what Dan just said. It's my job to make sure my sellers read the contract. It's not the buyer's agent. Yeah, it can kind of irk me if they're kind of sneaky, but it isn't their fault. That's still on me. They don't have to explain every little thing to me. I got to read the contract and I got to present it to my seller and make sure that they fully understand the contract. Okay, last comment of the day, make it good.
Creating a correct timeline, because a sense of urgency seems like you make bad decisions if you're not creating that correct timeline. Anything on both sides. Waiting for repairs to be ready for inspection.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Timeline matters, and the urgency of 6 months ago isn't quite the same. Hopefully we're educating our sellers to do that and our buyers to do that. And the one comment I would say on that is, and this goes for listing agents and buyers agents, is have the conversation with the loan officer prior to going under contract and know what their expectations are. Because there's a big difference between a commercial loan and a residential loan, or an investment loan, or a Utah housing FHA loan versus a VA loan. Like they are different, and the timetables are absolutely different. So knowing the lender, and I'll tell you, as a listing agent, I do call the lenders, especially when we're about to go under contract. I just want to know that I'm also that kind of agent. So they're like, "Ooh, I can't just like be nonchalant in this transaction, or the listing agent is also going to bust my chops." I want to keep them on the ball. The final comment really is, as agents, again, we have to do everybody's job. Take the time to learn what titles roll, what is escrow. Take the time to learn, hey, what is the inspections job? Should I be attending the inspections nowadays when I have very fearful buyers? Should I be opening the door for the appraiser when he comes by with a handful of comparables to hand him or her to explain how we arrived at our list price? And of course, how to do loans, frankly. How do different loan products affect the timeline? What are different requirements for different loans? Understanding that so you truly can be the quarterback. Any final thoughts? Going once? Hey, who's our lunch sponsor today? Is that you, Corey? Corey Zimmerman, Elevate Home Warranty. Come on down. It's a hot lunch too. Woo! Oh, nothing but the best for